Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. It's been a minute since I've done a recent reads, but I'm going to try to do more than normal, and then I'll probably even have a catch-up video next that will be quite long, but will be time-stamped and have much more videos or much more content and books than normal, just because I'm probably like 2 months behind or something like that. So we'll see. The first book I want to talk about, though, is The Bullet That Missed, Thursday Murder Club number 3. I consume this on audio, and the first thing to note about that is it is a different narrator. I'm trying to remember who. It is a actress that I can never remember the name of, but I'll put a picture of her and her name beside me, and she is quite good. I still really liked her narration, but I do think that I prefer the narrator for the first 2 books. But it was still, perfectly far above average, just not quite, 5 out of 5 stars as the first 2. This book I gave 4 stars, and I really, really enjoyed it, but it is quite different than the last 2. It is much more like convoluted, intricate, bombastic ensemble cast stuff going on. After what has been established in the previous 2, I think Osman is just sort of like let off his leash, kind of. Like there's just so much stuff going on in this book that it makes it, well, for one, it's going to be an excellent film, probably. I think Steven Spielberg's making the first one or something, right? But when they get to this one, I think this was the most filmable one. It feels more like jump cut edits all of the time, a lot more stuff going on, and all of the bits that you like, if you're continuing to read it anyway, that target the specific seniors still happens. Ron still gets the "it's always me" moments. There's still people threatening people's lives, but they're disarmed by Elizabeth. There's still a lot of great stuff going on, but it feels like the second book for me is pinnacle for it because it is very elegant in its execution of the plot in a way that this is the antithesis of. So I think if you thought that the second book might have been like a step back for you or something, and you wanted something more complex, and maybe not resolving every single tiny aspect of it, then maybe you'll like this book more. Like it feels like you'd like either or, just based on the kind of plotting that is occurring. So it still, I consumed it in like a day still. I absolutely loved it. I'll definitely be picking up the hardcover copy to go with mine. And I absolutely recommend it. I just think that if you expected something coming off the coattails of the second book to be similar, don't expect that, and your expectations will put you into the right headspace to enjoy this even more than I did, probably. Next, I did Into Thin Air, also on audio by Jack Krakauer, a personal account of the Mount Everest disaster. This whole thing was just anxiety-inducing for me because the amount of money that people throw at this venture, despite a lot of them having no clearance level or any kind of measures in place, really. I guess after this event they started instituting things. No shit. But the amount of danger that one person can put other people who are actually competent into actual mortal peril just because they simply paid somebody to get them to the top when they know nothing about what's going on, what to expect, haven't even bought the correct equipment. They what is it called, like caltrops or whatever, one group of people didn't even buy them at all for their booths, and then they had to like borrow some from other people. But it quickly devolved into a conspiracy of idiots up there, and then multiple people died, despite, you know, their idea of just throwing millions of dollars at these people to clear them, and these people wanting to provide that service because it has some like golden parachute comforts basically in the future. They can get any people that they want. If they summit these people, they can get any kind of clientele that they want, and they can charge basically whatever they want. Meanwhile, the Sherpas, who do a lot of the actual work for people, are getting paid like minimum wage and stuff like that. It's very like, enjoy looking at capitalism, this is a disaster type situation. And I think Krakauer is fairly good at looking at why things broke down and his own culpability, and he's clearly been haunted about his own decisions for a very long time, and it's kind of like a good moment, you know, like you should be haunted by these things, because he also was not that competent, and he made especially one specific decision that probably doomed someone to death, possibly. And it's because they were not prepared. They go, I don't really understand why people even want to go to this place. So it was a good book for me to read, because basically if you read to get put into the headspace of somebody else that you could never understand ever in a million years, this is the book for you. But it was fairly well written. It was, I would say, like a pretty good piece of nature writing, though not exceptional in any way. The actual story itself is the pull. I don't think he describes like the environment or the actual like pursuit of the goal all that well. It is more about a catharsis almost in him deconstructing the elements of what went wrong. That's the sort of heart of the book. Don't come to it to be like, I'm going to read this and I'm going to find out what climbing Mount Everest is like. The only thing you're going to get in that regard is like bullet points of how people messed up climbing, or how he messed up climbing, or how he thought one thing and it was actually another way. You're not going to actually get like a paint the scene vista of Mount Everest or climbing holds or anything like that. I'm going to talk about a 5-star book, Perdido Street Station. I talked about this on Tops and Flops with Shelley. This was a top book of mine, so I won't go too much into it, but it was absolutely fantastic. So this is a world in which the author has taken a lot of time to construct, and he is showing you the world. I think there's fantasy/sci-fi writers that fall into two camps. They have done the world building and they parcel it out in very like informal, indirect manner. Or there's people who are like, I want to show you everything that I've created, basically. And this falls into the second camp. So you'll either like that or you won't, based on if you are as excited as he is at showing you the things. For me, I was completely into it. This is like a hellish world, basically, that is constructed out of, not out of, but inside the decaying bones of a dead god. And so there are humans and there are like insectoid type creatures. There's class stratification that's codified into that, and the class has been delineated in certain like very different social monikers and constructs, as well as language, and how the insect people specifically communicate and what they want, how they make art. All of it is sort of drilled down into all good fiction books, basically, where it becomes about everything. But myopically, it is about a scientist who has been tasked by basically like a lord to create a hybrid creature, like human insectoid with wings, that is sort of like the holy grail of kit bashing humanity, which is all the rage in this city, by the way. People modifying themselves, grafting different things onto themselves. It's very like grotesque. He's dubbed as like the new weird author, right? And that's exactly right. It is very strange yet compelling and grotesque for a reason. Though definitely some horrible things occur in this, including like brain damage and sexual assault and stuff like that. So it is definitely sci-fi / fantasy for adult readers. And through the course of this same scientist also falls in love with a insectoid woman. I can't remember the actual creatures' names. And it sort of then becomes like a interracial almost relationship that is very dangerous for both of them because of who they work for, what they are doing, and then how all of that ties together. Absolutely compelling prose, fantastic stuff. I absolutely loved everything about it except for the ending, which was exceptionally brutal. It is definitely not a like typical sci-fi fantasy story in which, I don't know, all things are sort of buttoned up and it doesn't swing one way or the other. Like heroic people are rewarded and villains are completely got away with it and there's no sense of justice or anything. It's sort of balanced yet grotesque, brutal, heartbreaking, and filled with sorrow. So yeah, that's Perdido Street Station. I believe it's a trilogy. I'll definitely be reading the next book in it. Next, I tried to read, if not Winter, Fragments of Sappho. I'm not even going to rate it. I could not get on with this book. I didn't understand what I was supposed to take away from it. I couldn't project myself into the fragments to get anything out of it. My brain just doesn't work like that. So I gave it no stars and just put it down, basically. It was sometimes moving when there were fragments that kind of like coalesced into something. And then the structure also was really not great. This was in another Tops and Flops with Shelley and I, where this was a flop because the annotations for the actual stuff was in the very back, and it never actually told you that there were annotations in the back or footnotes or anything. So you would finish the book and then at the very end, suddenly it starts going into all this information about the stuff that would be pertinent. So it obviously is designed that way so that you would consume it all and then you'd probably consume it again and then flip back and forth, but it just was not worth it for me to do that. Next, I read Lapvona by Otessa Moshfegh. This was also on audio, and it's read by the author. I gave this 2 stars. It was, basically everyone who didn't like it, I pretty much agree with them. I found it very aimless, very like almost masturbatory in its telling of this. It's very like, so it's medieval. The inciting incident, I guess you could say, is that 2 boys, one of whom greatly resents the other, wants to like play a prank, but he's also an idiot, as most people in this story are. And when he throws a rock at the kid, he is on a cliff and he falls over and he dies. The justice that is meted out for this is he is then given to that family as recompense, I guess. And during that, he has like various kind of like almost like a coming of age story where his shame is shaping him, but also the shame of the actual culture in this medieval type village, and the piety or the interpretation of faith and belief in the village shapes it in conjunction with shame to make it a very like grotesque, disgusting picture of humanity and what men in particular get away with in this, and how it is like justified. So it's a lot of very frustrated reading. But it also is very meandering, and it doesn't feel like it actually has that much intent in what it is doing. Like, it almost feels like it's trying to insert themes and then take them back, or trying to say something specific with dialogue but then countervene it as well. So it's like, I don't know, the Seinfeld of books, where it's like about nothing, although it is clearly trying to say something about patriarchy and faith and stuff like that as well. And so yeah, it just became oddly boring, despite its often reviewed qualities of being like grotesque and disgusting and something that you can't look away from. For me, it was just a pretty quick read, read by the author. So if it hadn't been as short as it was, I probably would have DNF'd it, but I ended up finishing it and thinking not much of it anyway. Next, I read Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This I did on audio. It had a really good narrator as well. I put all the information in the show notes for the things that I neglect to take notes of, for translators or anything pertinent like that, narrators. So if you're ever curious about it, and I say an audiobook is particularly good, but I neglect to show a picture with like the narrator on it, just look below. And this was pretty good. I gave it 3 stars. I kind of was expecting more from it, mostly I think because I saw a bunch of people that I have similar tastes with give it like 5 or 4 stars. But it's a queer coming of age story, and her family, who are Asian American, I believe, are also like not susceptible to this whatsoever. And so much of this story is her being part of an in-group, and then finding herself self-identified as an out-group, and trying to like form an identity that straddles both, while also keeping it from her parents. And a lot of it is really good at the interactions feeling very lifelike, and like, yeah, the verisimilitude between her and her friends and her parents are really great. For some reason, the dramatic tension in this book felt like it was focused elsewhere for me, and so it almost felt like an Alfred Hitchcock film that doesn't quite hit, in that it like shows you something that should be filled with tension, and then as soon as that tension is gone, which you think the tension is elsewhere, the movie is already ended and the credits are rolling. And for me, that's what happened to this book. Like, it finally felt like it was about to start, and then it ended. And in some ways that ending was quite poignant, but in other ways it was simply not what I was most interested in or focused in. But I think like, had it continued even like 100 more pages, it would have easily been like a 4 or 5 star read for me. I read Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. I gave this 4 stars. This is my favorite book of hers that I've consumed so far. This is about a very odd woman who sees herself very differently than the other people in her life, namely her father, who is a shitheel. She sees herself as, like, she is unaware of seeing herself as this, but she definitely sees herself as a product of the things that he has verbally abused her with over the coming years. She has body shame issues. She has like right-wing beliefs. She has, yeah, basically been more or less instructed by the people around her to think and feel and view herself in a certain manner. And it is like a pretty quiet story until around 3/4 of the way in, where that's when you kind of find out why she's even telling you this story. So I can see why people would think it would be kind of like boring or a little bit slow to start, at least. But I found her exceptionally engaging and interesting to consume, no matter what she was thinking about or what she was doing. I think it was just a really well-crafted character. And so that when she tells anything about her perspective. It's just compelling, basically. She gets embroiled with this, like, other woman who she sees as sort of competition in an unhealthy way. And then the story sort of spirals off into a spoilerish territory that goes into like a very like violent and odd way, basically. But yeah, mostly I think you'll know if this book is for you or not just by consuming the first, 5 or 10 pages, and if the character clicks for you. That's what this book is going to be. It's going to be no more, no less. But through this praxis, she manages to also make it about many things, which for me, that's what good fiction is about, when it drills down into a human experience and it becomes about, more or less anything. This book does that very well. So far, it is my favorite, and the only other one I have to read by her is McGlue, and I own it, so I will. But after that, I'll probably be done with Moshfegh. I haven't gotten too much out of her stuff before. So yeah, I think this is sort of the heights, but who knows, maybe McGlue will change my mind. I don't know. Probably not, though. And lastly, I want to talk about an absolute banger, Fake Accounts. A lot of people will disagree with me on this, I think. I gave it 5 stars in the tops and flops with Shelley. This is the ultimate top for me. It is definitely going to be in my top 10 of the year. I thought it was absolutely incredible. It is satirical in a way, but also strangely verisimilitude for the current days of internet, generally people on Twitter. And it is very self-aware, tongue-in-cheek, making fun of this character in a way that, for some reason, some people don't, I think, pick up on that, and then end up hating the character, which you kind of should, because that's what the book is about. It's very odd. It's about a reasonably attractive yoga pant wearing Brooklyn white woman who holds certain leftish beliefs, who's dating a guy that she thinks is pretty attractive but kind of creepy as well because of the aesthetic that gains. And it turns out that this guy is a right-wing conspiracy theorist, but then also he ends up just suddenly having something happen to him to the point where, he dies, basically. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that it is on the back, yes. And the majority of the book is her deciding to have a spiritual awakening by moving to Berlin, I think it is. Somewhere in Germany, I'm pretty sure. To learn a different language, take herself out of the situation, mourn the loss, kind of this guy. Like, she doesn't even know what it means to her. And the entire time, she's dealing with this through a praxis of social media that end up dogging her or informing, like, completely subsuming basically her thinking process around the events that have happened. So it's all about performatism and all about how she's trying to like seek originality in doing something that is faux, and her life is faux in itself. Well, she also is on a sort of sabbatical, ostensibly writing this book that we're actually consuming. It devolves into sort of like satirical, excellent critiques of other modes of writing as well within it. It is hilarious, at least I found it to be. I was laughing probably like every 2 or 3 pages. I think it is a brilliant kind of indictment of this type of person, while also giving them quite a bit of humanity in the process and showing how and why her life is constructed like this, what is funny about it, what the joke is. And then to call it a satire is like not quite super on point, because you see these people all the time on Twitter being performative, being hooked on, the dopamine drug of doing this stuff and it having, the reins of their lives. So yes, it is satirical, but also it is tongue-in-cheek commentary that is absolute perfection and chef's kiss, I think, for me. And the ending is just perfect. It is perfect. I loved this book, and it took me a long time to pick it up because I saw so many reviews of people that did not like it for one reason or another. And to be fair, there are reasons to dislike this book, but it is also the point of the book to dislike those reasons. For instance, I think people of color reading this would be just friggin' exasperated with the character because they have dealt with these people all of the time online with these vague leftist notions, but with no actual gumption to put those thoughts, feelings beyond performatism. And yeah, so it would just be very exasperating for some people to consume this book. But to be fair, that is what the book is critiquing as well. So I'm not sure that that is like a justifiable reason to cast it aside either. But yeah, it'll definitely be something I revisit. I absolutely adore this book. And I'm sad that I kind of don't have it in a hardcover now. But yeah, that is my week in reading. Tons of bangers, basically, aside from one. And more will be coming down the line. Thank you for watching.